Hey, welcome to the first part of IELTS Speaking Make It Easy. For those who want to get above a 6, 6.5 or even to a 7.5. So this is lesson 1. I hope you've heard and listened to the introduction carefully. Lesson 1, part 1, and we're going to talk about frame 1. Frame 1 is the first frame, the first questions that an examiner will ask in part 1 of the speaking test. We're going to go over these because if you start off well, like most things in life, you will probably go on a very positive and increasingly good trajectory throughout the rest of your test. Okay, so quickly, introduction to who I am. I'm Oliver. I've been working in English language teaching for almost 20 years, probably over 20 years actually. I've worked in the UK, in the Channel Islands, in Spain, in Egypt, in Morocco, and China. China for 12 years in on and offline education. I've worked from teaching to business development to assessment. And I've worked as an examiner for Cambridge IELTS for over 10 years. And now I'm developing test prep materials, lessons, workshops, and other interesting things for Cooler. Okay, so the importance of part 1. We briefly touched upon this before, but I'd like to go over it just to emphasize to you how important part 1 really is. So part 1, preparing and training for the test. Part 1 is a perfect way to train yourself in everything. Short, punchy, concise, developed answers. That's not easy. Multiple topics. Quick topic changes. Let's talk about flowers. Now let's talk about teachers. Now let's talk about your favorite toy. Quick, rapid, different topic changes. Brilliant mental training. Multiple tenses. Questions about the past. Questions about the present. Questions about what you have done in your life. Polishing basic errors. Basic errors lower your score. You will not get beyond a 6 or a 6.5 with all these basic errors. Part 1 is a brilliant training ground to cut all these basic errors out. Preparing for varied, typical question types and patterns. Typical patterns have been going through part 1 for decades. Why are they the same patterns? Because they're covering all the basic parts of speech and tenses and structures and functions of the English language. Cambridge designed the test for this reason. Right, so part 1 is also a great warm-up. First impressions matter. You walk into the test, you do a great part 1. It gets you in the mood. It builds your confidence as well as giving a great first impression to the examiner. So it warms up your advanced thinking and your language use for parts 2 and 3. Doing a great part 1 is very important. You can start to feel natural. Again, you've walked into a room with a stranger who is judging your English. This is a stressful situation. Get yourself in the mood. By the end of part 1, you should feel natural in that situation. You should feel that you're in the zone with the examiner and you feeling good about yourself. Part 1 is very important. Thirdly, in the test itself, you can contribute to a higher score with a great part 1. Do not think that part 2 and 3 are the most important parts. They're not. The examiner will take part 1 into account. You can also really show advanced thinking and language use in part 1. You really can. If you perform a little weaker than you intended to in part 2 and 3, it's possible the examiner will take part 1 more into account if you do a very strong part 1. So be safe. Train yourself to do a great part 1. You'll thank me for telling you this. Part 1 is a brilliant training ground for English language speaking in general. It really is. So, my part 1 lessons. You're going to learn and train yourself to give grammatically correct, extended answers. Advanced, sophisticated answers. This does not mean complicated language. It means using language correctly and intelligently and flexibly. Natural, educated speaker, native speaker answers. So part 1 is a foundation, a preparation, a build-up to part 2 and 3. Follow me in this course and you will see exactly why and how, I hope. So, lesson 1, a perfect high-scoring answer. So, 1, just one model answer to a typical part 1 question type we're going to cover in this lesson. Yes, just one. We will look at the language in one of my perfect high-scoring answers. This method is how I want you to start thinking. The language we will study you can use in many, many part 1 answers and across the whole test. Trust me, you'll see. There's a state of mind here and a way of looking at things that I want you to start getting into. So what you must do, actively listen and take notes. Active listening and notes. Pause, rewind, watch again. Keep your notes. Write your own answers. Record your answers. Don't memorize whole answers. Don't do this. Memorize lexical chunks, collocations, word groups. Learn to use them in multiple different answers. You can practice. Keep doing this. Part 1 questions. There's always 3 topics covered in part 1, as you know. The first is frame 1, which is about where you live or where you study. And the other 2 are more random topics, chosen from a booklet of 15 or more different topic question frames. They follow patterns. Follow-up questions are when the examiner asks you for a bit more detail or for you to expand on your answer. We're also going to talk now about follow-up questions. Where you live, follow-up questions. Examiners always ask you where you live or what you do. I'm sure you're all good at answering this question. Let's say you are. Then they will ask you a follow-up question. We're going to work on answering a few follow-up questions. These questions enable you to really shine. So you've given your answer. I live in Beijing, da da da. The follow-up question really pushes you to another level, or gives you the opportunity to shine or to show you can speak at another level. So, how long have you? Simple follow-up question. How long? That's the question type. How long have you been living there? How long have you been studying in Manchester? Have you been interested in learning this for a long time? Have you always wanted to work in this job? This is a how long have you type follow-up question. Stop. Wait a moment. What is discourse management? What are lexical chunks? I mentioned these earlier. I use these words a lot in this course, so I want to stress them again here. Discourse management is the ability to manage a conversation. It's about thinking, but it's also about using linking words, using discourse markers, really sounding like a native, and lexical chunks, groups of words, collocations, phrases native speakers use in many different answers. Not memorized answers, but memorized phrases that we can fit and use in different places. I use these words a lot, so I want to keep making sure you understand what they mean before we move on. So, discourse management. Techniques and language to help you manage a conversation. What you say in your interactions. Discourse markers, linking words, connecting phrases. Approaches to how you answer a question. An attitude is also part of discourse management. Discourse markers. Well, anyway, yes, but like I said, as I was saying, actually. It's not just a case of remembering and memorizing these words. It's about feeling and seeing when they're used in sentences and how I use them. Again, listen to my pronunciation, my stress, my intonation, the way I speak when I use them. Try and copy this. What? An attitude? Yes, an attitude, an approach to how you answer something, a way of feeling and thinking and acting makes you sound natural. How you interpret a question, how you highlight subtle or smaller points, how you show an intelligent, thoughtful response, all of these just make you sound more native. A way of showing natural character. Yes, this is true. Because remember, we're aiming beyond 6.5 here. So it's a way of showing natural character. I'm not sure how I feel about this. These are example lexical chunks, by the way. It depends. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Well, I'm not sure. Let me think. I can't say I really like it, but I was thinking about this the other day. In fact, actually, I can't stand sports. However, well, if pushed to give an answer, I would say, so these are the kind of discourse, lexical chunks that you can use which show a bit of character, make you sound more native. Lexical chunks, again, I mention them all the time. Groups of words, short phrases. A lexical chunk is a group of words that go well together. A phrase, a part of a phrase even, a collocation of words that sound native when put together. They can be used in many, many, many different situations to answer many different types of questions. So lexical chunks are word groups. I use both phrases, so listen out. Simple examples. There are millions of simple, natural daily examples. Here's a few. It's really easy. It's a matter of time. I was so excited about it. See, even that sentence, I was so excited about it, sounds really native. And you can use that to extend any IELTS answer. I was really excited about it. I had a great holiday in Vietnam last year. We went surfing. I was really excited about it. I had a great time, actually, when I went back to see my family in England. Me and my brother had a great Christmas meal in this restaurant. I was really excited about it. See? You can use these phrases in many contexts. I was so excited about it. I was really excited about it. This is a lexical chunk. It's a word group. And it's really useful. It makes you sound very native. So, more examples. They're not especially fixed. They're quite flexible. I had a long and exhausting day at work. It was a tough period in my life. I was studying pretty intensely. The important thing is to remember to learn vocabulary in these chunks. Remember to learn vocabulary use in chunks and in context, not in isolated vocabulary lists. It was a long and exhausting day. You could use this in pretty much any answer. It was a tough period in my life. I was studying pretty intensely. Okay, again, just examples. Let's get into it. Part 1, frame 1, follow-up questions. Where were we? The examiner has just asked you about where you live. He follows up with another question, a follow-up question. How long have you been living in Beijing, Oliver? How long have you? Question type. How long have you been living in Beijing, Oliver? Here's my answer. Well, actually, I first arrived here in, 2015. So I've only been living here 4 years, but sometimes it feels so much shorter. It's funny how time flies. I think the years here have gone by so quickly because I've been studying pretty intensely and also having a lot of fun and getting really into the language and culture. When you're busy and productive, time goes much faster. Now, this isn't really about me, because I've been here since 2007, but I'm pretending that I'm a student. I'm pretending I'm a student, maybe an overseas student, doesn't matter. Let me read that again. How long have you been living in Beijing, Oliver? Well, actually, I first arrived here in, 2015. So I've only been living here 4 years. But sometimes it feels so much shorter. It's funny how time flies. I think the years here have gone by so quickly because I've been studying pretty intensely and also having a lot of fun and getting really into the language and culture. When you're busy and productive, time goes much faster. Let's look at my logic first. Answer logic. I state when I first started living here. I say how long I have been living here. I extend my answer by adding my feelings about this. I then give reasons for my feelings. I round off with what I'm calling a universal opinion statement, a comment that might be true of all people in general in life, or a little piece of wisdom. Again, each phrase is succinct and quite naturally spoken. Let's break it down. How long have you been living in Beijing, Oliver? Well, actually, I first arrived here in, 2015, so I've only been living here 4 years, but sometimes it feels so much shorter. It's funny how time flies. So we can start many answers with, well, actually. Let's look at how we can use this. Actually can be used to introduce a small fact. Well, actually, I first arrived here in, 2015. To introduce a statement of fact about yourself, or something you believe in, or an emphasis. It suggests an interest in the question. It's a discourse marker. Well, actually. It can also be used to revise your opinion, in revising your own opinion. Well, actually, thinking again. For example, do you like sports? I don't like sports. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. I do like some sports, like rock climbing, if you can call that a sport. That's a very native speaker answer. It sounds really natural, because I'm questioning myself a little bit. Stating what may be a surprise to the listener, actually, can mean, in fact, to be honest. Something you think might be a little unexpected. Do you enjoy listening to music? I do. Actually, I not only like listening to music, but I'm a DJ in my free time. I play at parties and big nightclubs. Whoa. You know, it's a new little surprise fact. Not only do I like listening to music, actually, I'm a DJ. Well, actually, I not only like listening to music, but I'm a DJ. Little interesting fact that might be a surprise to the listener. We can use actually to soften a negative response. Actually, in fact, to be honest, I must say, makes a negative, unexpected response sound a bit more positive or soft. Do you enjoy listening to music? Actually, to be honest, I must say, I really hate music. I know a lot of people like it. I just can't stand it. See how actually kind of softens it, stops you sounding quite so hard. Actually, to be honest, I must say, I really hate music. So actually can be used in a few different ways like a native speaker and make you sound really native. But as we go through this course, listen to how I'm pronouncing my words, where I'm laying stress on my words and phrases, and where I'm pausing. So, in my model answer, I used it as an emphasis on a fact. Well, actually, I first lived here in, 2015. I'm introducing a statement of fact about myself. I'm emphasizing a fact. It's a lead-in to an answer. And it also is not only native, but buys me a bit of time. It's managing discourse. It's connecting ideas and thoughts naturally. Okay, so 2, moving on. I first lived here in. So, getting back to the answer. How long have you been living in Beijing, Oliver? Well, actually, I first lived here in. So I'm not repeating the question structure exactly at first. I'm actually using another tense correctly, present simple. I'm starting with a bit of extra information before answering the actual question. This shows personality and character. The question was, how long have you been living in Beijing? And I will answer the question. But first I'm adding, I first arrived here in 2015. Let me see. Discourse marker showing thought, also buying time. I first arrived here in, let me see, 2015. This indicates a pause for thought. I'm calculating. Very native speaker discourse marker. Let me see, when you're thinking. I'm buying myself time. It also shows personality and character. We can't overuse these things, but we should use them, especially when we're working out. Well, I arrived here in 2015, which means it's a natural place to use this. In 2015, again, this is an obvious grammatical point, but don't lose marks on prepositions of time. Get your prepositions of time right. In 2015, in plus a year, a month, a season, in the summer holidays. On plus weekend, my birthday, a date. On the 23rd of January, on my friend Guy's birthday, on the weekend. On plus a holiday or a vacation. At plus a time, Christmas, spring festival, an occasion. Note, 1995. Say your dates correctly. 1995. 2015. So before and after the year 2000, we use a different structure. Don't lose marks on this. In 1995, in 2015. Just get these basics right. Prepositions and how you talk about dates. Don't lose marks on basic errors. 5. So, I've only been here 4 years. So, answers the actual question. I finally answer the actual question, adding a touch of style. So, I've only been here 4 years. It's a factual answer. The tense is correct, mirroring the tense of the question. I add only. Why? To indicate a feeling, an opinion about the time. This suggests I feel that 4 years is not really a long time to live here. So in one short sentence, I've sounded like a native by actually putting in very simple words and phrases in a thoughtful way, no complicated language, and immediately, wow, I sound like a really smart, intelligent, normal native speaker. It's how I've used the words and how I've emphasized them. 6. But sometimes it feels so much shorter. A touch of style, a real feeling. I've added my feelings. Sometimes it feels so much shorter. I've expanded on my comment. So expanding on your comment about your feelings is quite important. I've added a nuance, an extra detail, a little mood, expressing personality, character, sincerity, thought. It's funny how time flies. A common idiomatic expression in English, still used by native speakers quite a lot. We use it when expressing that something has gone by especially fast. It's found in a common saying, time flies when you're having fun. I don't recommend you use much of these kind of expressions unless you're really sure that they are used very commonly by native speakers. I think the years here have gone by so quickly. Because I've been studying pretty intensely. I think the years here have gone by so quickly because I've been studying pretty intensely. So, I give a reason to support my statement of feeling. Be careful about tenses, the present perfect, the past simple, with the recent and present effect. Be careful about your tenses here. Use them carefully. A collocation or a word group. Been studying pretty intensely. I've been studying pretty intensely. Pretty intensely. Point 9. I've been getting really into the language and culture. Again, lexical chunks, a natural word group, a great chunk. Learn the whole chunk. I've been getting really into the language and culture. Be careful to use the present perfect correctly. It's a continuing action. You're still into it. I have been getting into the language and culture. I started in the past, but I'm still into it. Remember, a good phrasal verb, to get into something, to be enthusiastic and about studying or doing something, about getting into something. I'm really into football. She's really into modern cinema. 10. When you're busy and productive, time goes by faster. Thoughtful reasons, feelings, and an example. When you're busy and productive, time goes by faster. This is what I call a universal truth or opinion statement. It's a wise statement that we all can agree with. A great way to round off an answer. A great collocation, busy and productive. When you're busy and productive, time goes by. In fact, you can learn this whole phrase and use it whenever you're talking about productive use of time. You're varying your language. You're not repeating time flies again. You're extending it. Time goes by is quite a common construction. When you're busy and productive, time goes by faster. Learn this whole chunk. Think where you're going to use it and use it in your answers. So let's read my answer again, putting these things together, which I've just talked to you about. How long have you been living in Beijing, Oliver? Well, actually, I first arrived here in, 2015. So I've only been living here 4 years, but sometimes it feels so much shorter. It's funny how time flies. I think the years here have gone by so quickly because I've been studying pretty intensely and also having a lot of fun and getting really into the language and culture. When you're busy and productive, time goes much faster. Time goes by much faster. So what we have learned, studying just one answer, we have learned a lot of structures, patterns, and techniques that we can use in hundreds of answers, actually. Studying just one answer, expressions we can use in many Part 1 answers, collocations, idiomatic expressions, educated native speakers use. Sophisticated and advanced, yet not difficult ways of putting our thoughts into words for high scores. Not overly complicated. Capturing essences of mood, attitude, and meaning which make us sound like a native. Task. I'd like you to do this now. Answer these questions yourself. Use what we've learnt today. Go back. Stop. Make notes. Practice what we've learnt today. Write your answers down, check them, and read them aloud. Here are the questions. How long have you been living in your town or city? How long have you been living in your apartment? How long have you been studying your subject? Have your family been living in the same house for a long time? Notice, the topics are all different, but the question pattern, the question type, is the same. And if you learn to answer the question type, you'll be able to answer multiple questions. So don't get locked into thinking about topics. Think about question types. How long have you been doing something? You can give a brilliant answer and establish a great basis for a high score by getting this kind of grammar, structure, vocabulary, and native speaker attitude right and integrated flexibly into your answers. So remember, following study tips. Go back and use what we've learnt today. Write your sentences down. Review them, check them from grammar and lexis. Read them aloud. Record your answers, play them back. Reflect on the attitude, feelings and opinions you're conveying. This is not just an answer to one part one question. It's actually loads of language that can be used in all parts of the test, but this is a practice. Train yourself to answer these questions in various flexible ways. Thank you. And we'll move on to the second lesson when you're ready.